Welcome to our NC Pro Pangram and Expense Report training. Today I will be taking you through the Pangram session of this training. My name is Brenda Smith. I'm the database analyst.
Hi, I'm Michael Bennett. I'm the program analyst with the Policy Strategy Reporting team. I'll be covering the subaward attachment later on in the training.
As you can see on this slide, Pangram stands for Pandemic Grants and Awards Management. So in this database system is where we keep record of all the funding programs and the funding amounts that have been awarded out to your different agencies. From the recipient point of view, the registration, most importantly, you should have an NCID number in order to get started to even register for accessing our Pangram. So get your NCID credentials and use those same credentials to log into the website for the registration application for Pangram, and you will receive your access approval to access the system. And between getting these items set up and getting your account created, turnaround time is 1 to 2 business days. So here's the interface for our NCID login. So this is the page that you will see when you're logging in with your NCID credentials. So again, to get access to Pangram, you will have to fill out a registration application, and you see the web link that's highlighted there. So use this link to access the application. And 2 items I want to point out here on this application. At the top, there's a section for agency. So here is where you will have to select the NC Pro Pandemic Recovery Office from this list of agencies to be able to grant access to Pangram. So be sure to choose NC Pro Pandemic Recovery Office. The other blanks are specific to you, your identifying information, name, your agency name, and so forth. So at the bottom of the application page, there's a section where you will have to select the role. And primarily this role will be to submit reimbursements and expense reports. So be sure to select this option from that list to have access granted to you for the Pangram system. So once you receive the approval and receive your login credentials, here is the Pangram login page that you will use. Within the Pangram, again, we're housing all of the funding programs that have been approved, and there are different programs. For example, we have SFRF funding, and we have other programs such as GEAR and INGS. And once these programs are established, the awards have been granted. There are agreements that will be made for each project for your agencies. And then there are the 2 main roles. The grant manager will monitor or manage these agreements with the different disbursements, any supporting documents and communications that are needed to get this agreement established and set up in the system. So from the recipient's point of view, once these are set up, when you access your account in Pangram, again, you will have access to submit pay requests, expense reports, and upload any supporting documents and any other data that the grant manager needs from you to make sure all the information is put into the system that should be uploaded for your agreement, which is specific to each project. So the agreement creation, the grants manager works with the legal team and the accounting team to get the agreement set up. So again, communicating with you and any interviews that they have with you, based on terms and conditions of your agreement, they will collect any data for supporting documents and forms that are needed. You'll get your MOUs and contracts signed, and this approval will allow the agreement to be created in the system and be ready for access. So this screen shows here from the recipient's point of view, once you're logged in, again, after everything's approved and set up, but once you're logged into Pangram, you will see the interface here. your interface is broken down into primarily 3 different sections. You will see a search area, you'll see where you can create records, and you'll see web links. So that middle section that is highlighted is where you would create, if you are ready to submit an expense report, or if you're ready to submit payment for reimbursement. These are the 2 links that you will have access to from your interface. So you will click either one of those depending on which record you're trying to create. So the first type of record, the payment request form, when you log in, when you click on that link, it will show the projects that are approved within your agency, and you will have direct access to those. So when you click on the pay request, be sure once that payment request form opens up, that is automatically populated with information that is directly for your particular project that you're submitting a request for. So the top section, you will see pre-populated information. The items that I have highlighted here shows the specific items that are required for you to fill out. So the first item, you'll see the type. So whether you're requesting reimbursement funds or you're requesting for disbursement for payment, you will select one of those items there. To the right of that, you have an invoice period. So just show the period from and the period to for the expenses that you're reporting to have payment claims for. And in the next section, that full line that's there shows the expense category. So depending on your specific agreement for this project will determine what items are listed there. It may be just one line item. It could be multiple line items. So it should match what is outlined in your agreement. So in the next section below that is where you will key in exactly the amount and the corresponding information that you're requesting payment for. Reference number is an internal number identifier that you will use to assign to these line items. So that is specific to you, and it's what you would determine that number to be internally within your agency. The reference date must fall within that invoice period that you have stated at the top, the period from and the period to, so the reference date must fall within that range. Type in the description for the item that you are referring these amounts to. In the next section, accounting categories, there's a list of pre-populated items that are listed there, and I will show you those items in the next slide. But in that particular field there, you must choose from one of those 6 items and show the amount, and it calculates the total amount, and it will update those amounts at the section above as you key in different numbers there. So below that, you do have comments. This is a blank section here where if you need to type in a few more additional details for any justification of the information that you've keyed in the top, you can use this comments box to do that. Below that, there's a check box to attest to the information that you're keying in here that is true and accurate based on the information that's filled in. So here, jumping back to that reference number field, when you are deciding to key in an identifier number there, be sure to not lead that reference number with zeros. We have found that using leading zeros have caused some errors within our database when we're trying to run reports or to have that particular field identified. So be sure not to use leading zeros when you choose a reference number to put in that field. And again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, for the accounting categories, this is the drop-down box, and it shows 6 items, 6 different options that you can choose from. So be sure to choose one of those items for each line that you are reporting on. And one other quick thing here, you can see at the end of that line, it shows a button to add line. So if you require more than one line item to fill in, and that will depend on what expense categories are outlined in that section above. So if you have more than one line item up there, you will have more than one line item where you will need to fill in, because each line item needs to reference each expense category that's outlined. And if you don't need any additional lines, just use the blank line that automatically comes up when you open the form. So moving on to the expense reporting, the expense report keeps track of the different administration costs and program costs and any payments made to beneficiaries. You'll see in the next column, subrecipient data, there will be additional attachments that you will need to upload, and that is the section where Michael will give more detailed information for that. Again, with the expense reporting, there's also programmatic data that will need to be filled out, so you will see that section in our next couple of slides. Just like the payment request form, the expense report form, when you click to open a new submission, the information at the top should be automatically populated there, which is specific to the project that you're reporting on. So just do a quick view, make sure that's the correct information. Make sure your agreement ID numbers match, the name of your agency, your agreement period. So make sure you're reporting on the specific project. So with the period here, again, there's a period from and a period to. Primarily, this will be monthly reporting for expense reports. So show your beginning of the month to the end of the month in that section. And below, again, with the yellow, what's highlighted there, no leading zeros when you create a reference number for that entry. The reference date must fall within that period from and period to that you've specified at the top. Key in your descriptions for your entry, select the accounting category that's relevant to the entry that you're making, and key in the amounts of expenses that you're reporting on. And again, if you need to add a line, just click that button at the end to add additional lines if needed. The bottom of the expense report, or the second half of that report on that page, is the programmatic data. So here is a couple of questions that will need to be completed. Some questions are drop-down options, so just choose the options that's best for your entry there. And any other fields, just key in the information to give detailed information for that question that pertains to that project. Again, you have a comments box on this form as well. So key in any other additional information that you want to explain. I'll give some justification for entries above. Just use that box to do that. And be sure to select the box to attest to the information that you have keyed in here. At the bottom of each form, you will see 3 options to check the information that you've keyed in. You will have the red button for save, and there's a green option for submit. The check box will run a check once you're finished, and you click that. It'll search the form for any errors. Saving puts it in a pending state, sort of almost like a save and finish later. You're not ready to submit, but you want to come back to it. Just save the information that you've just now keyed in. Submit will actually send it off once you're ready to submit it for review and approval. That will send it to your grant manager. So be mindful when you save it, it doesn't submit it. Again, save will keep it in a pending state until you're ready to go back into it and submit it. And submit it will actually send it off to your grant manager for review and approval. For expense monthly reporting, there's a timeline to report for the month's expenses. You have a reporting window from the 1st through the 15th of that following month. We do offer a grace period from the 16th through the 24th for you to get that information in. So once you submit your pay request and your expense reports, this is just a quick look at the interface of what the grant manager will see. The section that is highlighted there, circled in red, the workflow tasks section, that's where your record that you have submitted for your request or your report, it will land there for the grant manager to see, so they'll know that this report or request is ready to be reviewed and looked at for approval. So a few other functions that we use Pangram for, of course, is for reporting. So all this information that is gathered, that is housed here, we use it to for reporting purposes to our different teams and to our leadership teams. We monitor the progress of the different projects that we have housed here. So we keep track of the different the number, different pay requests, the different expense reports, and other items that's important to the agreements that are created for these projects. And also this data is used in this system for research and analysis. So real quick, I want to go over a few common mistakes. So the first thing, as I stated earlier, when you are filling out your request forms and your report forms, be sure to fill in all the fields that are required that are there. Do not leave any fields blank. Missing fields and blank lines will generate sort of inaccurate information in our system when we try to gather this information for reporting. At the bottom, this comes from a blank line when you add a line and maybe you find that you don't need it. Or you added it by mistake. So just be sure to delete that line. There is an option where you can delete a blank line if it's not needed. Another issue we've come across, a mistake we've seen, when you're using your search options, primarily is or contains may be the two most common conditions that are used. Using an example for agreement record number, agreement ID numbers are 10 digits long. So if you choose the condition for is, you will have to key in the full record ID number in order to get a result that you need. If you choose is and you're using a partial number and not the full 10-digit number, you will get an error message that no results are found. So if you find that's the case, if you choose is, be sure to key in the full record ID number and you should get a result that you're looking for. So when you use is, use the full record ID number and you will see that it will yield a result down there in your results list. If you're using contains, when you use contains, and again, in the example with the agreement ID number, if you key in all 10 numbers, 10 digits, that technically contains those 10 digits, but the system is a little bit picky about this. So you will have to key in just a partial number. It will not recognize a full ID number with the condition for contains. So again, you will see it says no records found here. Save and submit. As I stated a little bit earlier, when you're saving, it does not submit your record to your grant manager for review and approval. Save leaves it in a pending state. Submit actually sends it to your grant manager for review and approval. And when you do submit, you should get a confirmation number or a confirmation message that it has been submitted successfully. And one last item that I want to talk about here, when you click to create a new request for submission, when you get this form validation error, we found that it's because that there's a pending request sitting with your grant manager that hasn't been approved yet. So it will not, the system will not allow you to submit any new request if there are pending requests. So if you get this, just exit out of it, reach out to your grant manager if you want to check the status of the pending one. And then you all can communicate from there and see what next steps are. So at this time, I will turn it over to Michael and he will go over a review of subaward attachments.
So in these slides, I will be going over where to find subaward attachment information on the NC Pro website, Then I'll be doing a full walkthrough, completing a subaward attachment for both revenue replacement and non-revenue replacement projects. And I will explain in detail the important differences between those two different categories of projects. And lastly, I will go over how to attach the subaward attachment to Pangram and go over some helpful hints in order to successfully complete the subaward attachment. So first things first, it's important to know just where to get this information. So what you're going to want to do is start going to the NC Pro website. That's ncpro.nc.gov. And when you're on our website, you want to navigate to the upper right and look at the guidance tab. And from there, click on guidance. It will bring a drop-down menu. You're going to want to click on the reporting information and resources tab. That's going to have all of our information, not just on SFRF, not just for subaward attachment, but all of our reporting information. That's a very important resource to have. I would recommend favoriting that website. So when you're actually in that section and you're looking at our reporting tools and all of our information, right off the bat, you'll see there's two distinct fields on our web space. One is for revenue replacement projects, and the other is for non-revenue replacement projects. There are different reporting requirements depending on which category of project you are working with. So it's very important to make sure you know which category a given project is associated with. That will determine how much and what types of reporting are necessary for a given project. And all of that information is on our website. The two different types of reporting are delineated based on that, and all of our resources will let you know if you're working on something that is with revenue replacement or if it's non-revenue replacement. I also want to point out that on our website, in that same web space, you'll see that we have reporting handbooks, which give detailed information about how to fill out the subaward attachment, as well as other important SFRF reporting information. Again, these are divided between revenue replacement and non-revenue replacement projects. So always important to keep it in mind of which type of project you are working with as you fill out the subaward attachment. So where do you actually find the templates in order to do this? Well, on our website at the bottom, you'll see a circle there. There's actually a download where you'll be able to download the attachment. We have blank templates for both revenue replacement and non-revenue replacement subaward attachments. So what you'll do is just download those files, and then you'll be able to start inputting information across all of the tabs. And for right now, I will do a walkthrough of a revenue replacement project first, and then I will show some of the differences with a non-revenue replacement. But just to reiterate, for right now, the tabs we are looking at, these are going to be just for revenue replacement projects. So when you download the attachment and you open up for the first time, the first page you'll see is our certification page. This has important identifying information for the project that you are working on. You'll see you'll have a reporting month, a date of submission, and then the name, title, email, and phone number of the reporting individual for the specific project. You'll also see on the right of the certification page is a table. You'll have all of the reported obligations that are keyed into this attachment, and over time, all the obligations that are entered in will start filling up this column and automatically tabulate the total obligations as you put in new information automatically. And lastly, I'll point out that there is a comment space on the certification page for any comments or notes. Moving on to the next tab of the subaward attachment, we have a help text page. There's a lot of information with SFRF reporting and a lot of words or phrases you might have seen before, but they have a very specific context with how this type of reporting for SFRF goes. So I wanted to make sure that we highlighted all the different terms and phrases and how they actually relate to this kind of reporting. So you'll see we have all the different items highlighted. We have helpful text. We also have all the different formats for each of the different columns, the types of information that are required in the subaward attachment. If a column is requesting text, is there a character limit? could be 40 limits, could be 200 plus characters. So whenever there is a limit, that information is highlighted in the column. In addition to there being built-in validation, when we were constructing these templates, we wanted to do as much work possible to make sure we were getting appropriate information. So if a column is requesting information with 10 numbers and you enter in 11 numbers, the template should not accept that number and will reject it. Once you make it 10 numbers, satisfy that validation check, you'll actually be able to input that value. And then lastly, on that rightmost column, you'll see if all the columns let you know if it's required information, if it's optional, or if there's any conditions. Some columns are conditional where you only fill them out depending on a previous answer. So in every instance, across every column, we let you know if something is required, if it's optional, or what conditions apply to those specific columns. Moving forward, we have a reporting guide on that third tab of the subaward attachment. This just lets you know whether you even need to open up the subaward attachment within a specific reporting period and even enter in any information. So starting at the top of this flowchart here, you'll ask, have you altered or made any new obligations or subrecipients? If you haven't, a subaward report is not necessary for that reporting period. If you have, you'll ask if that subrecipient is an individual. If it's an individual, then you do not need to make a subaward report. If it's not an individual, then you ask, did you enter an agreement or amend an agreement with an entity to whom you are funding $50,000 or more using SFRF? If that's not correct, if you've done all of that, but this subaward amount or obligation is only for $30,000, you will not need to make a subaward report in that reporting period. However, if all of those questions are true, then you will need to complete sheets 1, 4, and 5 of the revenue replacement subaward attachment. So that brings us to the first tab here for revenue replacement, where you'll be entering in information for subrecipients. As you can see, all the different column headers, you'll be giving information on the reporting month, the subrecipient UEI or TIN, the name of the subrecipient, and then there's some other information associated with each specific entity. And I'll point out right now, this is also highlighted on this tab. But for each subrecipient on this specific page, it only needs to be entered a single time for each entity. If you were filling out a report and you had an entity and you filled out their information, and let's say a year from now, you make a new obligation to that same entity, you would not need to make another row with that same information for that same entity. It only needs to be filled out once per type of organization or entity. So now going on to the next tab for revenue replacement, actually looking at the subawards. As you can see, a lot of this information is the same from the previous tab. Looking at the specific reporting month, subrecipient UEI or TIN, then you will give a subaward a number for that amount. You'll indicate the type of the subaward, and then have the amount and subaward date, and then some identifying information. I'll point out right now, it's very important for the subaward a number not to have a leading zero. Excel tends to cut off those leading zeros, so it's very important just to make sure that it doesn't start with a zero. Then you'll see all the rest of that information with place of performance, city, state, zip code, and then again, a section to write the purpose of the subaward funds. Now we'll be switching gears a little bit and looking at specifically non-revenue replacement projects and highlighting any of the key differences. So an important difference for subrecipient reporting for non-revenue replacement projects on the subaward attachment is you must supply a UEI for non-revenue replacement subrecipients. For non-revenue replacement, you could use either a UEI or TIN. For non-revenue replacement, we have to have a UEI for each of those subrecipients. Additionally, there are some further questions asking about whether a subrecipient is registered in SAN.gov or not. That's a drop-down yes or no. If a organization or entity is not registered in SAN.gov, that brings some additional questions that have to be answered that you can see on the screen graph here related to executive name, total compensation, and some additional information. Now looking at expenditures for greater than or $50,000 for these projects, a lot of this information is the same, but looking at expenditure start date and expenditure end date, it's very important to, as we're filling out this information, the expenditure start date has to come before the expenditure end date for these non-revenue replacement projects. There's a validation check of the US Treasury portal where we eventually transfer this information to. And if the start date comes after the end date, it will not validate in Treasury system. So it's very important that the logic for those two questions makes sense. Just want to point that out there. And then on this next tab, it's for subaward amounts that are less than $50,000. They don't need to be reported kind of on their own itemized rows. All of them get aggregated together on this tab. And you can see the column headers with reporting month, the subaward type, total period obligation amount, and the total period expenditure amount for these aggregate of subawards within that reporting period. Then on this last tab, we'll be looking at payments to individuals. Again, you will have a reporting month. You'll have the total period obligation amount and the total period expenditure amount aggregated for payments to individuals. And I'll point out that for some of our projects that have sole proprietorships, those count as payments to individuals. So if you have any payments for sole proprietorships, this is the tab where that information would be entered in. And there is additional programmatic information for some non-revenue replacement projects that gets entered in when certain milestones are met. Reporting contacts for these projects should reach out to their grant manager if they have any questions about entering in this data. And then once the information, once the subaward attachment is completed, you are able to upload that attachment into Pangram. And then from the perspective of the grant managers and members of the reporting team, we're actually able to see that subaward attachment in Pangram. And we're able to grab that document, pull out the information, and then start inputting it into the Treasury system. Now getting to the end of my section, I just wanted to point out some helpful tips for common mistakes. Again, every single column on the subaward attachment for both revenue replacement and non-revenue replacement projects will be marked whether a column is required, optional, or conditional. So always make sure to familiarize yourself with all the different columns. If a required column is left blank, it will not validate in the Treasury system, and then we'll have to go back and request that information. So it's very important if something is marked required, that there is some value inputted for those cells. And then similarly, carefully review all the different validation checks. We try to construct these templates with some guardrails to not allow certain values to be inputted if they don't conform with those rules, but some things slip through the cracks. So be very mindful of when there's certain validations, such as character types. If a column is asking for numeric information, don't use characters. If there's a limit for a purpose of subaward or some other column that's asking for narrative information and it has a character limit, double checks to make sure that it's not exceeding that limit, because again, that will not validate within Treasury's system. And this concludes our Pangram and subaward attachment training. For additional resources, please visit our website at ncpro.nc.gov.